321 home. Yu Pan deliberately worded it ambiguously, so the others thought they had held hands. When Duan Mei heard that the two of them had held hands, she was shocked. She hurriedly looked at her husband. I think we should quickly find Shilian to settle Yu Bing and Yan Yin's marriage. If Yu Bing really gets together with that man, we won't get a single cent. Mr. Yu lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. There's no hurry. She's on a business trip. Perhaps for safety purposes, she brought a male colleague along. We'll ask when Yu Bing comes back and see what the situation is. If you look for Shilian so rashly, what if it's not what you think? Duan Mei thought to herself, what if it is? However, she thought about how 2 days wasn't a big deal, so she endured it. Duan Mei had just picked up the loofah and was about to continue digging when she suddenly thought of something. Oh no! Didn't Yu Yin say in her last letter that she was coming this Wednesday? Mr. Yu was shocked and turned to look at his wife. Hurry up and call her. Tell her to return to the village and come back some other time. The Yao couple is enough of a headache for us. If Yu Bing finds out and exposes it, how can we continue to live in the courtyard? Duan Mei agreed anxiously. I'll go now. Yu Pan, cook the loofahs. After Duan Mei instructed Yu Pan, she took her bag and went straight to the post office. Yu Bing and Xiaoxing worked for another 2 days before finally completing the market investigation. Yu Bing chose a working day to go home. Before she left, she went to the supply company to buy 2 pounds of mung bean cake. At 5:30 in the evening, it was time to get off work. Yu Bing specifically chose this time to go to the courtyard. That's Yu Bing, right? Looks like it. She has changed so much. Are you Yu Bing? Someone asked curiously. Yu Bing immediately smiled and greeted, Auntie Chang, I'm Yu Bing. Those who knew the Yu family surrounded her. You're getting more and more beautiful after you went to the countryside. Aunt Chang also asked curiously, you've changed so much from before. Even we, who have been your neighbors for so long, can barely recognize you. We thought that you were just a look-alike. Are things hard for you in the countryside? Why do you seem even better off than when you were at home? When Yu Bing heard this, a bitter smile appeared on her face. Things are quite tough in the countryside. When I was busy farming, I was so tired that I felt that my body was no longer mine after work every day. However, although I was tired, I could at least eat my fill. That's why I grew taller. I'm quite lucky. A few months ago, our village opened a food factory. Life became easier for me after I started working there, so I gained weight after a few months. Sai, your mother is too much. She left all the heavy work at home to you, but she's quite good at pretending outside. After comparing you to your brother and sister, who wouldn't know what's going on? Duan Mei thinks she hid it quite cleverly and thinks we don't know. The person who spoke was Yu Bing's neighbor and had watched Yu Bing grow up. The neighbors had always seen the unfair treatment Yu Bing had suffered. In the past, they had helped speak up for her, but Yu Bing was still young at that time and was very obedient to her parents. As outsiders, they could help once or twice, but they couldn't help every time. Sometimes, when they saw Duan Mei's pretentious act, they treated it as watching a circus act for free. This was the effect Yu Bing wanted, but she still acted helpless. I'm not in good health, so it's inevitable that my family will complain. That's why I wanted to do more work to make up for it. However, it's useless. In the end, I got sent to build a village. Sai, let's not talk about it anymore. At least I've made it through now. Yu Bing's vague words made everyone's imagination run wild. Who didn't know that life in the countryside was tough? There was endless work all day long. Because of the hard work, rural people looked much aged than city dwellers. Even young and strong city people might not be able to adapt if they went to the countryside. Despite having 2 healthy children, the Yu family made Yu Bing go. This was no different from letting Yu Bing fend for herself. When Duan Mei saw a group of people surrounding Yu Bing from afar, she frowned and shouted, Yu Bing? When everyone saw Duan Mei, they tacitly changed the topic and greeted her. Yu Bing turned around and replied, Mom. Duan Mei greeted the neighbors. Then, in front of everyone, she smiled at Yu Bing gently and said, Yu Bing, hurry up and go home. Yu Bing followed Duan Mei upstairs, but she knew that the contents of the conversation just now would quickly spread. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 322 not allowed to be together. Yu Bing followed Duan Mei into the house. Yu Wu was lying on the sofa reading a novel when he heard the door open. He knew that Yu Bing had already returned to Hang City. Although he had already found out from Yu Pan and his mother that Yu Bing was no longer that thin and weak, he was still a little surprised to see her in person. However, after the surprise, he didn't express anything else. When Yu Wu saw the things in Yu Bing's hand, he was interested and sat up. What good things did you bring back? Do you have jam? Yu Bing placed her luggage in the corner of the sofa for the time being before placing the pastries on the coffee table. I bought 2 pounds of mung bean cake. When Yu Wu heard this, he shouted, Yu Bing, you're too stingy. You only come back once a year, but you only bought 2 pounds of mung bean cake. Duan Mei went forward and realized that there was really only mung bean cake. Thinking of how Yu Yin gave them jam and money, Duan Mei's expression immediately became even uglier. Yu Bing, is this how you show your filial piety to your parents? Yu Bing lowered her eyes and said helplessly, I have no choice. The factory hasn't paid off its debt yet and I bought these 2 pounds of mung bean cake with my savings. At this moment, the door opened again. Yu Pan and Mr. Yu had returned home. Yu Bing greeted obediently, Dad, sister. Mr. Yu was stunned for a moment because Yu Bing was clearly much healthier. Then, he nodded. Yu Pan replied aloofly. When she realized that there was something on the coffee table, she also walked forward happily. When she found out that Yu Bing had bought an ordinary snack, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at Yu Bing. You're the factory director, yet you brought back such cheap goods. Yu Wu also chimed in, that's right. Yu Bing, go to the supply company and buy some good things. Yu Bing only listened and didn't say anything. This was her biological family. After everyone saw her, they were not concerned about how she was doing in the countryside, but were thinking about what else she could provide them with to continue parasitizing. Mr. Yu saw Yu Bing's smile fade. Although he was also very dissatisfied, he thought about how he still had to ask Yu Bing some questions later, so he felt that it wasn't good to disappoint her. Yet. Hence, he berated Yu Wu and Yu Pan and said to Yu Bing, your brothers and sisters speak without thinking. Ignore them. It's good that you're back. Yu Bing didn't say anything else, but she sneered inwardly. From these words, he was basically distinguishing Yu Bing from them. Yu Bing lowered her eyes and acted like she was a little down. Dad, Mom, you both know the situation of our factory. We're on a business trip, but we even have to pay for travel expenses ourselves first and see how to get reimbursements after we get back. Duan Mei was speechless when she heard this and glared at Yu Bing. Stupid. All you ever do is do free labor. When Mr. Yu heard this, he wavered a little. It had been almost half a year since the factory opened, but it still wasn't profitable. If the food factory closed down in the future, without Yu Bing's current position, the Yao family most likely wouldn't fancy Yu Bing anymore. At the thought of this, he asked gently, Yu Bing, you're not young anymore. Do you have a boyfriend? Mr. Yu decided to understand the situation first. What if that bumpkin's family was quite well off and could fork out more betrothal money? Yu Bing knew that he was asking about Xiaoxing, so she feigned innocence and replied, no. Duan Mei couldn't hold it in anymore and said, if not, how could you have held hands with him? Yu Bing frowned. When had she ever held hands with Xiaoxing? Who spread the rumor about me? Yu Bing asked despite knowing the answer. Yu Pan felt a little guilty, but she remembered that she had forgotten to mention something else, so she immediately perked up and said, I even saw you twist his arm. If you guys weren't together, why would you guys be so intimate? Yu Bing paused for a moment. She really didn't know how to explain this. When Mr. Yu and Duan Mei saw Yu Bing's expression, their hearts skipped a beat. They immediately guessed that the two of them might not have officially confirmed their relationship yet. Mr. Yu immediately asked, how's Xiaoxing's family's situation? Yu Bing planned to beat her parents at their own game and use Xiaoxing to completely destroy her parents' desire to let her marry into the Yao family. Hence, she replied obediently, his parents are no longer around and he's raising his siblings alone. They're all adorable children around the age of 10. Unfortunately, his sister has poor eyesight, so he wants to save money to treat her eyes. Mr. Yu and Duan Mei exchanged looks and said sternly, Yu Bing, I'm warning you, you're not allowed to be with him. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 323 Hurry up and scram. Duan Mei added, you have to find someone capable. Good looks are useless. The key is that he has 2 burdens. Hurry up and give up on him. We will arrange your marriage. We won't harm you. Yu Pan was watching the show from the side. In her eyes, it was the same whether Yu Bing married Xiaoxing or Yan Yan, since she still had to stay in the countryside. However, if she married Yan Yan, her family could get the betrothal money and she could get some from her mother as her dowry. Yu Bing remained silent with her head lowered, making it impossible to see her expression. Mr. Yu and Duan Mei didn't like Yu Bing's current cheerfulness and confidence, because what they needed wasn't an independent Yu Bing, but an obedient Yu Bing who only knew how to work for the family. After Yu Wu realized that he couldn't get any other food from Yu Bing, he stopped paying attention to what was being discussed at home and continued to read his novel. Only when he was a little hungry did he shout at Duan Mei, Mom, hurry up and cook. I'm starving. Duan Mei turned around and looked at Yu Wu with a smile as she comforted him. I'll go cook right away. Eat a few pastries to fill your stomach first. With that, she turned around and saw that Yupan had already eaten a few pieces. She slapped Yupan hard and rared, "How dare you? You ate so much at once. Your brother hasn't eaten any yet." With that, Duan Mei immediately wrapped the mung bean cake and took it back to her room. Yupan shook her head proudly. Although it was the cheapest pastry sold in the shop, it was still quite delicious. She had eaten quite a few pieces just now, so this slap was worth it. When Yubing saw this familiar scene, she sneered. It was time to make her ultimate move. She didn't want to stay in such a scheming family for another second. "Mom, I'm not staying at the guest house anymore, but at home instead. Remember to cook my portion for all 3 meals. I'm busy, but I'll be back for meals." Duan Mei came out of the room and sized up Yubing. As she entered the kitchen, she said, "I can cook your share, but pay me money and food stamps." Yubing deliberately walked to the door of the house and looked at Duan Mei helplessly as she said loudly, "Mom, I really don't have money. I've already spent most of it at the countryside to see the doctor and nourish my body. If it weren't for those stamps and money, I wouldn't have been able to enter the factory. I only have 2 food stamps worth 3 taels left. I still have 1 yuan left for the bus ticket to inspect the market. Dad, Mom, I can only rely on my family now. I won't be staying for long, just a week." Duan Mei, who was washing the rice, paused. Then, she turned around and glared at her as she shouted agitatedly, "A week? If you don't have money and stamps, don't even think about staying for a single day. You're on a business trip for the factory, so let them take care of you." Duan Mei felt that it was already good enough for her to let Yubing go home and save money on the guest house fees. Moreover, Yubing had to give her money and stamps for food, and she had to let Yubing take on all the housework at home. This way, she could relax for a few days. Unexpectedly, this wretched girl wasn't willing to pay at all. The more Duan Mei thought about it, the angrier she became. "Get lost. Think of a way yourself. Dream on." Yubing replied loudly, "Mom, when our factory earns money, I'll apply for money and send it back to you." Mr. Yu watched as the 2 of them spoke louder and louder. The soundproofing of the building wasn't good, so he was afraid that others would find out that his family was too stingy to give food to his daughter and that they would say that they were abusing Yubing, so he went forward and whispered, "Be quiet. Aren't you afraid that others will know what our family is saying?" Duan Mei was about to say something when she was stopped by Mr. Yu. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath anymore, so she shouted at Yubing angrily in a low voice, "Get lost." Yubing lowered her head and raised her hand to wipe her non-existent tears. Then, she went to the sofa to get her luggage. After opening the door and walking out, she turned around reluctantly and said, "Mom, I'll really return the money and stamps to you. If you let me out now, I'll starve." Some families on the same floor were sitting at their door while picking vegetables and chatting. When they heard the commotion, they pricked up their ears to eavesdrop on the Yu family's conversation. Now that they saw Yubing leave the house with her luggage, they felt even more interested. When Mr. Yu saw Yubing like this, he stopped his wife, who wanted to scold Yubing again. Just as he was thinking about how to explain in order to prevent the neighbors from thinking that he had chased Yubing away, he saw Yubing slam the door shut with a bang. He was at a loss for words. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 324 agreeing to the marriage proposal. When the neighbors saw Yubing turn around and leave, they frowned. Mr. Yu and Duan Mei are too outrageous. They even want to charge their daughter money for a few meals at home. That's right. Their family of 4 has 3 people working. I can often smell meat when I pass by their home. How can they be short of food for 1 more person? Moreover, Yubing already said that even if she doesn't have money now, she'll make up for it later. Yet the couple can actually bear to watch Yubing starve outside. If it were me, I wouldn't have come back. Indeed, how heartless. It's time to eat, so they should at least let her have a meal. The Yu family doesn't even want to give her a single grain of rice now. Yubing could naturally imagine the discussions of outsiders. This was a part of her plan of escaping the Yu family's control in the future. With the advantage of public opinion being on her side, it would be easier for others to understand her. After Yubing left, Duan Mei looked at her husband and said, "I think she did it on purpose. She wants to ruin our family's reputation." Yubing's actions could be interpreted as leaving after being rejected, but it could also be interpreted as Yubing deliberately showing her neighbors that her family mistreated her. However, no matter what, this matter had already affected the Yu family negatively. Mr. Yu no longer cared to think about what Yubing's intention was. Since they definitely wouldn't be able to get Yubing's salary, he began to agree with his wife. After dinner, go to Shilian and discuss the 2 children's marriage with her. Settle it as soon as possible and get the money. This year, the recruitment for sending intellectuals to build the countryside has begun again. I just pulled some strings today. Yu will go to the food factory to work as a temporary worker. As long as Yu gets this position, he won't have to go to the countryside. We have to gather enough money quickly. Duan Mei's eyes lit up. All right, I'll go tonight. At the Yao family's house. When Shirlien saw Duan Mei standing at the door, she greeted her with a smile. Duan Mei, it's been a long time since you've been a guest at my house. Come in. When Duan Mei entered and saw that Mr. Yao was also there, she smiled and said, Mr. Yao is also here. That's good. Mr. Yao stood up and replied with a smile, You're a rare guest. Please sit. Shirlien welcomed her in and let her sit on the sofa. Then, she poured a glass of water for Duan Mei and said, Is Yupan ready to get married? Duan Mei smiled and said, It's not confirmed yet. They're just dating. Duan Mei changed the topic and revealed her true motive for coming to the Yao family's home. Shirlien, Mr. Yao, my husband and I thought about it and felt that a good child like Yan Yin is indeed rare. I really don't want Yu Bing to marry a bumpkin, or else even if the intellectuals can return to the city in the future, she won't have a chance at all. Therefore, we discussed it and decided to agree to your previous marriage proposal. Shirlien's smile didn't change, but she disdained Duan Mei's actions. Previously, she wanted to keep Yan Yin hanging and see if she could climb up the social ladder through another man. Now, she changed her mind? It was too late. Thinking of the contents of her son's letter last week, Shirlien felt a little smug. Her son was indeed outstanding. With his own strength, he had found a girl whose family was more than 10 times more well-off than his family. He could even return to the city and find a job. How could Yu Bing compare to her? Hence, Shirlien looked at Duan Mei indifferently and replied aloofly, Duan Mei, I thought about it and decided to let the children decide it themselves. Yu Bing has high standards. My husband and I also thought about it later. What you said makes sense. Marriage is about reciprocation. Let the two children choose who to date themselves. They're still young, so there's no hurry. Duan Mei paused. She could tell that Shirlien had changed her mind, so she was a little anxious. Her son was still waiting for money in order to pull strings. Duan Mei realized that it wasn't the Yao family who was proposing marriage now, but their family. Hence, she could only smile and say, What do children know? The parents should make the decisions regarding marriage. How can parents harm their children? Aren't many couples like this? They're living quite harmoniously now. Shirlien was very calm. You can't say that. Free love is popular now. We should also learn from it and keep up with the times. Don't be anxious. Our children will have their own match. These two children probably are not meant to be together. Otherwise, they would have been engaged already. Duan Mei knew that Shirlien was determined not to consider Yu Bing anymore, so she said with a stiff expression, All right, since you've decided, I hope you won't regret it and come looking for me after this. With that, she stood up and left the Yao family's home. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 325 Not Getting Married. When Shirlien saw Duan Mei leave, she crossed her legs proudly and said sarcastically, Now, she's throwing a tantrum? Why didn't she think of this today when she was ignoring us previously? Does she really think that her daughter is in high demand and my son is grass? Does she think I'll regret it? Dream on. The two of them had completely fallen out. On the other side, at Jiang Chun's house, after a few days of peace, old Madame Jiang came looking for her again. This time, in addition to Jiang Yu, she also brought her eldest son and daughter-in-law. After Jiang Mei opened the door, she felt vexed when she saw that it was her mother-in-law and greeted timidly, Mom, brother, sister-in-law. Old Madame Jiang snorted in response. Jiang Yu's parents no longer had their usual arrogant attitude and smiled as they chatted with Jiang Mei. Although Jiang Yu was as rude as usual, he didn't call the couple useless, as he usually did. Jiang Chun was changing her father's dressing in the room. When she saw the Jiang family, she greeted them. She was a junior, so she didn't want to give them an excuse to make an issue out of etiquette and accuse her of being ill-mannered. Old Madame Jiang sat by the bed as she looked at Jiang Wu and said, How's your leg? We came to see you. Seeing that his mother was concerned about him, Jiang Wu was in a good mood. Mom, I'm much better. Brother, sister-in-law, Jiang Yu, thank you for visiting me. After Jiang Wu finished speaking, he smiled at Jiang Mei. Honey, quickly bring a few stools in for my brother's family to sit on. Jiang Mei wasn't as happy as Jiang Wu. She knew that old Madame Jiang must have come for Jiang Wu's job again, but she still brought 3 stools in. Only then did old Madame Jiang continue, I didn't come to visit you because I was worried that it would affect your rest. As soon as we found out that you were feeling better, your brother's family suggested coming to visit. You have to remember your brother's family's kindness. Jiang Chun couldn't help but sneer. Old Madame Jiang immediately glared at Jiang Chun. If not for the fact that there was something important to deal with at the moment, she would have taught Jiang Chun a lesson already. Brother, you need to climb a ladder in order to count the goods in the warehouse. If your legs are crippled, don't climb up and down. I'm doing this for your own good. Let Jiang Yu take your place. Jiang Chun couldn't help but mock. Grandma, my father only has a temporary fracture, not a broken leg. He can recover. Old Madame Jiang endured her anger and didn't respond to Jiang Chun. Instead, she said to Jiang Wu, Brother, I made this decision for your own good. Your family doesn't have a son, and Jiang Chun won't be of much use after she marries someone. At that time, she will focus on her in-laws and won't care about you guys. If you give the job to Jiang Yu, our entire family will be grateful to you. When you and Jiang Mei are old and need help, Jiang Yu will also help you. After Uncle Jiang pushed his son's arm gently, Jiang Yu immediately said what they had discussed at home, Third uncle, third aunt, don't worry. In the future, when you're old, call me if there's any heavy work at home. Jiang Wu was a little hesitant when he heard this. His daughter would get married sooner or later, so he and Jiang Mei indeed had to consider their retirement. Jiang Chun didn't expect old Madame Jiang to bring this up. Her father was only in his early 40s and was still about 20 years away from retirement. Jiang Chun made up her mind and said, I'm not getting married. When my father retires, I'll come back to take over and stay by my parents' side to take care of them. Jiang Yu's mother smiled and said sarcastically, which girl doesn't get married? Be careful, or your parents will be mocked. When Jiang Mei heard this, she panicked. What nonsense are you talking about? How can you not get married? If you don't get married or have children, who will take care of you when you're old? In this day and age, not many people had the courage to get a divorce, let alone not get married. They felt that this would be very embarrassing. There was a saying that family scandals couldn't be aired in public. Therefore, no matter what the situation was at home, in order to maintain the integrity of the family, there were many people who chose to tolerate each other for the rest of their lives. The Civil Affairs Bureau handled very few divorce certificates a year. In order to get her mother's support, Jiang Chun could only change her words. Then I'll work at both sides and marry a man who can accept it. Jiang Mei and Jiang Wu also felt that this was a good idea. Other people's children would never be like their own. How could they be as assured as their own daughter taking care of them? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 326 Sewing Discord. Old Madame Jiang gritted her teeth in anger. When she saw Jiang Wu's leg in a cast, she had an excuse again. Her tone was filled with concern as she said, You're not in good health and your legs are broken. What if you get too tired at work and it worsens your condition? I am considering for Jiang Yu's sake, but you're also my son, so I am also considering for your sake. If you give your job to Jiang Yu, you'll still have 5 yuan a month in the future and you don't have to work. That's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Moreover, you don't have to pay for my monthly retirement expenses. Jiang Chun knew that her father would start to waver if old Madame Jiang spoke gently, so before her father could speak, she stopped him. Grandma, the doctor said that my father's legs can recover. My father's poor health is due to a chronic illness. He was able to do this job in the past, so he can do it now as well. Only then did old Madame Jiang look at Jiang Chun and say unhappily, Your father will get older and older. As his mother, I can't bear to let him work so hard, even if you're ruthless enough to. Old Madame Jiang glossed over the fact that she had snatched her son's job and made it seem as if she was doing it for her son's sake. She even blamed Jiang Chun for mistreating her parents. Old Madame Jiang wanted to sow discord, but Jiang Wu wouldn't fall for it. He knew how filial Jiang Chun was. Last year, when they were recruiting from door to door for intellectuals to go to the countryside, Jiang Wu couldn't bear to let Jiang Chun suffer, so he suggested giving his job to Jiang Chun. However, new employees only earned 18 yuan a month, while due to Jiang Wu's work experience, Jiang Wu's salary had already increased to 25 yuan. This meant that the Jiang family's monthly salary would be reduced by 7 yuan. With 3 more people at home, this 7 yuan might not be enough for Jiang Wu to even buy the cheapest medicine every day. Therefore, Jiang Chun stopped Jiang Wu and insisted on going to the countryside. Later, Jiang Chun earned some money in a mountain village and often sent packages home. Only then did Jiang Wu improve the quality of his medicine and his body recovered a little. Jiang Wu couldn't help but speak up for his daughter. Mom, there's nothing wrong with my body. Jiang Chun is assured because she knows that I can do it. Jiang Wu was filial to his mother, but no matter how filial he was, how could he possibly prioritize his nephew over his daughter? When Jiang Mei saw that Jiang Wu had the same thoughts as her, she heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at old Madame Jiang and mustered her courage to go forward. Mom, after Jiang Chun went to the countryside, Jiang Wu and I have been living a better life than before, but now, you insist that we give up our jobs. In that case, Jiang Wu won't even be able to afford the cheapest medicine. Moreover, Jiang Chun is 19 years old this year and will reach marital age in 2 years. We have to start preparing the dowry now. Our family doesn't even have 20 yuan in cash now. As parents, we don't have the ability to save up money for Jiang Chun's dowry, so I discussed it with Jiang Wu and asked Jiang Chun to save up her salary as a dowry. If we even take this money, how can Jiang Chun get married? If she doesn't have a dowry, she will be looked down on by her in-laws before she even gets married. How can she have a good life in the future? The more Jiang Mei spoke, the sadder she became. Her family had sacrificed the most for her in-laws, but why did her in-laws want to force her family to a dead end? It was one thing for her to favor boys over girls, but why did she not even care about Jiang Wu's well-being? Mom, please let our family live our lives. Jiang Mei had been oppressed in the Jiang family for so long that she didn't even dare to speak loudly. This was the first time Jiang Mei had expressed her thoughts and emotions so assertively, shocking everyone present. After old Madame Jiang came back to her senses, she glared at Jiang Mei with her small eyes as she scolded loudly, "You be *tch. In the past, you always stood quietly at the side and didn't even dare to make a squeak. Turns out you were pretending all along. You made me really think that you were a good person. Turns out you were waiting for this day. Let me tell you, my son's relationship with me is not something you can sow discord with. You only gave birth to a girl after marrying into our family, yet you dare to shout at me now? Why does a wretched girl need a dowry when she's getting married? What a waste." After old Madame Jiang scolded her, she still felt that it wasn't enough and even got off the bed nimbly, planning to teach her third daughter-in-law a lesson. "Jiang Mei, you have such a potty mouth. I'm gonna tear your mouth apart." Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 327 Take care. When Jiang Mei saw her mother-in-law walking towards her, she was so frightened that she didn't dare to move. Jiang Wu was anxious, but could only lie in bed and couldn't stop her. Fortunately, Jiang Chun had been paying attention to old Madame Jiang. Seeing this, she immediately went forward and grabbed her hand. "Grandma, are you planning to pester us again?" Old Madame Jiang looked at Jiang Chun with an ice-cold gaze. Then, she pulled her hand out slightly and immediately started using her old trick. She sat on the ground as she began to cry. "My life is really tough. I raised you painstakingly, but you're just going to watch your wife and daughter bully your 70-year-old mother? Do you have any conscience? What a sin. I was thinking for your sake, but you didn't appreciate it. Jiang Wu, you're really disappointing. I'm already so old, but I was scolded by your wife and beaten up by your daughter. I'm really a failure. I'll just die so that I won't be an eyesore to your family." Jiang Wu wasn't blind, so he naturally knew that old Madame Jiang wanted him to beat up his wife and daughter. However, his wife had been with a sickly person like him for so many years without complaints and regrets, while his daughter was filial and sensible, so he couldn't disregard right and wrong just to please his mother. However, when he saw his mother sitting on the ground and wiping her tears, he was in a dilemma. He could only say helplessly, "Mom, the floor is cold. You have rheumatism to begin with, and your legs will hurt at night if you suffer the cold. If you have anything to say it in bed." Old Madame Jiang was going all out. She originally thought that after she finished speaking, her eldest son's family would immediately help her up, and she would be able to get up at that time. Unexpectedly, no one did so. If she listened to Jiang Wu's words, how could her words have any deterrent effect? Jiang Chun pretended not to see old Madame Jiang's distortion of the truth. When she saw that Jiang Mei wanted to go forward, she even secretly stopped her. Old Madame Jiang had to continue acting, so she could only continue shouting, "Turns out that you still care about my life." Then chased Jiang Chun back to the village. "I feel upset whenever I see her now. If you still want me to be your mother, you have to do as I say." The eldest son's family didn't help her because they thought that if old Madame Jiang continued to sit there and cry, the effect would be better. As for the fact that her body would hurt from the cold, she could endure it. She wouldn't die from it anyway. Now that old Madame Jiang had said this, the eldest son could tell that his mother wanted to chase Jiang Chun away, so she could convince his third brother and wife in private. Otherwise, with Jiang Chun around, it would indeed be difficult to negotiate. Hence, he said, "Brother, don't make Mom angry. Let Jiang Chun return to the village first." When Jiang Wu heard that she was only asking Jiang Chun to return to the village and didn't mention anything else, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Mom, Jiang Chun will be back in a few days. She's on a leave." When old Madame Jiang heard this, she immediately stopped wiping her tears and looked up to ask, "How many days is the leave?" Jiang Wu thought of the time on Jiang Chun's certificate and replied, 5 days. Mom, it's not easy for Jiang Chun to come home. She only comes back once a year. When the eldest son heard this, he anxiously shot old Madame Jiang a look. Old Madame Jiang received the hint and said, no, she has to leave tomorrow. Jiang Chun was a little puzzled. She could tell why old Madame Jiang wanted to chase her back to the village, but she didn't understand why she was in such a hurry. Hence, she planned to test them and force them to reveal it themselves. Dad, I applied for leave with our village chief and leader yesterday. They know that I'm an only child, so they allowed me to take care of you at home for half a month. Old Madame Jiang was even more unwilling to accept it when she heard this. She immediately clutched her chest and shouted, my chest feels stuffy whenever I see this wretched girl. Are you trying to anger me to death? You're not even willing to agree to such a small request. When Jiang Chun heard this, she said calmly, Grandma, if my mother doesn't go to work soon, she'll probably lose her job as a part-time worker. In that case, my father can't lose his job all the more. I'm staying at home to help my mother take care of my father. Old Madame Jiang paused for a moment. When she saw Jiang Yu sitting beside her, she had an idea. Let little Yu come here to take care of them for half a month. Hurry up and return to the village. Jiang Yu was stunned. Why was he being dragged into it? They had never mentioned this at home before, so was old Madame Jiang serious, or was she lying to Jiang Chun? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 328 ad-lib. Through Jiang Yu's reaction, Jiang Chun could tell that this was old Madame Jiang's improvisation again. She had an idea and said, then it's best if you stay at my house. My mother has to work during the day and rest well at night, so she can't keep watch. My father might have to go to the bathroom at night. It's best if you sleep on the floor, so you can get up at any time. You must do daily maintenance for him twice a day. You have to help my father exercise his joints every day to prevent muscle atrophy and joint stiffness. By the way, you have to turn him over regularly every 2 hours to avoid bed sores. Also, before Jiang Yu could figure it out, he heard Jiang Chun's blabbering. He had yet to even remember the first part, but Jiang Chun kept blabbering on and on. Jiang Yu was befuddled. Stop, stop, stop. It's so troublesome. I can't remember it all. Whoever wants to do it can do it. I can't do it. Jiang Chun nodded in understanding. You're a man who does great things. It's indeed a waste of your talent to stay at home all day to serve others. When the eldest son and his wife heard Jiang Chun's words, they found her much more pleasing to the eye than before. It was indeed a waste of their son's talent to serve others, but they could understand old Madame Jiang's actions. They knew that it was most likely to trick Jiang Chun into leaving first. If it really didn't work out, Jiang Yu could come here every few days to put on an act. Jiang Yu was excited when he heard this. Of course. Jiang Chun, I realize that you're quite discerning. With my talent, I have to stay in the city to showcase my skills. Jiang Chun replied supportively, Cousin, you're more suited to working in an office. To put it bluntly, my father's job is to check inventory in the warehouse. How bright of a future can you have? All you'll ever do is deal with a pile of goods. You won't even have a chance to meet the higher-ups. You won't even have a chance to show off. Jiang Yu felt that Jiang Chun had hit the nail on the head. That's right. I had no choice. The recruitment time. Cough, cough, cough. When old Madame Jiang heard that things were going in the wrong direction, she hurriedly coughed violently. Mr. Jiang and his wife also reacted and hurriedly tugged at Jiang Yu's arm while thinking about how to smooth things over. Jiang Yu is a child, so let him start from the basics and get some training experience. Although Jiang Yu didn't finish his words, Jiang Chun still remembered the keywords and understood that their eagerness was related to the registration time of the intellectuals being sent to the countryside. At this moment, old Madame Jiang also said in dissatisfaction, Jiang Yu is a down-to-earth child, so he will start from the bottom, unlike some people who are already in charge of the department at such a young age. If people attain success too easily, they'll become arrogant. For example, a certain someone has only been a small leader for a few months, but she already dares to get aggressive with her elders. I wonder what the factory's leaders are thinking. How can they choose a woman? My poor grandson. He has talent, but nowhere to showcase it. Sometimes, Jiang Chun was impressed by how deeply rooted old Madame Jiang's misogynistic mindset was. She was clearly a woman herself, but no matter what she said, she always discriminated against women. Jiang Chun was already used to it and retorted calmly, Grandma, then I'll swap places with my cousin. I'll give him the position of a small leader in the countryside. I believe that with my cousin's participation, the food factory will definitely be raking in money every day. Since I don't have the capability, I'll just make do with staying in the city. Old Madam Jiang immediately spat. In your dreams. Jiang Chun smiled insincerely and said, Grandma, you made it sound so good that I really thought I got a bargain. Although it was summer, the cold air on the floor still seeped into old Madam Jiang's body through her clothes. Her legs began to feel a little uncomfortable, and she became frustrated. Seeing how stubborn Jiang Chun was, old Madam Jiang knew that she wouldn't be able to achieve anything even if she continued to argue with her, so she didn't want to waste time talking to her. Old Madam Jiang targeted Jiang Wu again and said angrily, Don't say that I didn't give you a choice. Either give Jiang Yu your job or let Jiang Chun buy a ticket back to the village immediately. Jiang Wu didn't want to choose either option, but when he saw his mother sitting on the ground with an unyielding attitude, he was also in a dilemma. The room fell silent. Jiang Chun sighed. Her father was too filial. Fortunately, ever since her malnutrition incident, he had started to think more about his family, so there was still hope. Jiang Chun looked at old Madam Jiang, who was already fidgeting a little. She knew that she definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Therefore, she couldn't let her get up immediately. Otherwise, once she recovered, there was no telling how long she would cause trouble in their house. Grandma, don't make things difficult for my father. He's most worried about your health, so aren't you forcing him to compromise? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 329 in good health. Jiang Chun hinted to old Madam Jiang that sitting on the ground and crying was very effective. On the other side, she said to Jiang Wu, Dad, you can't move your legs now, so it's useless even if you're anxious. Don't worry, my grandmother lives with my uncle's family and they take good care of her. She'll be in good health. Old Madam Jiang wasn't someone who would mistreat herself. Rheumatism was a problem caused by poor living conditions when she was young and couldn't take good care of her body, but in other aspects, she took good care of herself. When Jiang Wu saw old Madam Jiang's rosy face and heard her energetic voice, he was no longer anxious. He tried to convince his mother. Mom, Jiang Chun is our only daughter. She's been in the countryside for a year and it's not easy for us to meet, so there's no hurry. She's insensible, so I apologize for her making you uncomfortable. Don't hold it against a child like her. Seeing that her move had no effect on Jiang Wu, old Madam Jiang became a little anxious and her attitude became even tougher. Let me tell you, you can only choose one of two. You don't have to explain so much. If you don't do as I say, I'll go to your workplace to cause trouble. Let's see how you can stay in the workplace in the future. Old Madam Jiang was dropping all pretense, so Jiang Chun didn't intend to be polite anymore when she heard this. Grandma, you were in a hurry to chase me away because I stopped my father from giving his position to my cousin. But you're already so old, you should have heard of this saying, right? Cutting off someone's source of income is like killing their parents. You're not giving our family any way out. If that's the case, you're forcing me into a corner. If you go to my father's workplace, I can risk my life to go to my uncle's workplace and the courtyard where you guys live to make a fuss until everyone knows. I'll let others judge if this is the right thing to do. I don't believe that giving my father's job to a healthy young man is more important than my father's life. As the saying went, the timid were afraid of the tough and the hard were afraid of the ruthless. Jiang Chun realized that she couldn't be soft-hearted to these people. The more soft-hearted she was, the more she would be bullied by them. When old Madam Jiang saw Jiang Chun's unyielding demeanor, she knew that she had no choice, so she looked at Jiang Wu again and said, What your daughter is saying is what you mean, right? You want to cut ties with the Jiang family, right? Jiang Chun stood in front of her father and looked straight at old Madam Jiang with a firm attitude. Grandma, if you're willing to lose the 5 yuan my father gives you every month, we'll listen to you. If you want to sever ties with us because of this, we have to respect your choice out of filial piety. Jiang Wu was unwilling to agree to his mother's request, but he had never thought of leaving the Jiang family, so he was a little angered by Jiang Chun's decision. Jiang Chun. When old Madam Jiang saw her son's reaction, she looked at Jiang Chun proudly with a hint of provocation in her eyes. Jiang Chun took a deep breath and turned to look at her father helplessly. Dad, don't you understand? You treat them as family, but do they treat you as family? They only want to suck your blood. Even if you don't do it for yourself, you have to take care of yourself for me and Mom's sake. With that, Jiang Chun stopped looking at her father and turned to old Madam Jiang and the eldest son. Grandma, Uncle, if you guys are heartless, don't blame me for being heartless. My father is about to lose his job, so I'm not afraid of losing face. I won't be going anywhere these few days. I'll go downstairs to get a loudspeaker and tell everyone about your schemes. When the eldest son saw Jiang Chun's desperate expression, he was really worried that if Jiang Chun kept her word, how could his family stay in the courtyard in the future? At the thought of this, he felt a little terrified. Not knowing what to do next, he looked at his mother blankly. They were used to standing behind their mother and enjoying the benefits Jiang Wu's family brought, so they had no experience with such direct confrontations. Old Madame Jiang could no longer hold it in. Her legs were already starting to hurt. When she saw Jiang Chun's aggressive expression and the timid expression of the eldest son's family, she was furious. "Help me up!" Only then did the eldest son and Jiang Yu's mother hurriedly help her up. Old Madame Jiang endured the pain and decided to hold on for a while longer. This time, she changed her strategy and looked at Jiang Wu with a sad expression. "Think about the time you had a high fever when you were young. I didn't sleep well the entire night and took care of you. When you weren't feeling well, I hugged you for the entire night. Think about it carefully. Do you have to go against us over such a small matter? As for the money to buy your medicine, I've also considered it for you and given you a plan. The money is enough for you to buy medicine. All right, we'll leave first. Think about it yourself. Is our mother-son relationship more important or your job more important? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 330 Disillusionment. With that, old Madame Jiang endured the pain and left. Jiang Chun had to admit that old Madame Jiang's last move was much more brilliant than her crying, shouting, and fighting. Humans were emotional creatures, especially people like Jiang Wu, who valued relationships. This move was very effective against him. In the afternoon, Jiang Chun took the time to go out and ask about the recruitment time for this year. When she found out that the name list would be confirmed in 3 days, she instantly understood why they were in a hurry to chase her away. Jiang Chun knew that she had to have a good talk with her parents. Or, she could drag the time and make Jiang Yu go to the countryside. However, as long as she wasn't at home, her dad's job would be snatched by those people sooner or later. After all, other than a third cousin, there were still a few other cousins of the right age. If they didn't completely give up on the position, this matter definitely wouldn't be over. After dinner, Jiang Chun went to her parents' room. "Dad, Mom, let's talk." Jiang Chun took a stool and sat in front of her father's bed. "Dad, what are your plans now?" Jiang Wu looked at his wife and daughter guiltily. "Jiang Chun, I know you're thinking for my sake, but I think some things are more important than money." Although she had already mentally prepared herself, Jiang Chun was still angered by Jiang Wu's final decision. "Dad, are you really planning to let me send all my salary back every month?" When Jiang Mei heard this, she was the first to disagree. "No. That's our daughter's dowry money. We don't have the ability to save dowry for her, so at least we can't drag her down anymore." Jiang Wu hurriedly comforted his wife. "Don't be anxious. I didn't say that I wanted my daughter's money. Jiang Chun, you don't have to send it. I've thought about it. I plan to get your mother to go to the match factory to get a matchbox for me to paste. 10 of them cost a penny. If I'm proficient, I'll cost 10 yuan a month. Coupled with the 5 yuan your cousin gave me, we'll have 30 yuan. It's just that it'll be hard on your mother. It wasn't easy for her to start living a better life, but now, she has to live a hard life with me." To Jiang Mei, as long as it didn't harm her daughter's interests, she wasn't afraid of suffering herself. "It's fine. Don't all families live like this?" Jiang Wu held his wife's hand and the two of them looked at each other affectionately. Jiang Chun was speechless as she watched the two of them make things difficult for themselves, but act so touched by each other's so-called sacrifices. She was so exasperated that she actually lost her temper. "Dad, Mom, we don't owe my uncle's family anything. Why should we suffer and give all the benefits to others?" Of course, Jiang Wu knew that he didn't owe his siblings anything, but he owed his parents. "Your grandmother gave birth to me and raised me. Now that she has mentioned this, she will be unhappy if I don't agree." Jiang Chun decided to analyze it for her father. She had to completely destroy her father's fantasy of kinship with her grandmother in order to save him from being free labor for the other Jiang family members. "Dad, Grandma has been involved in many things. Which one of them didn't you agree to? But what happened in the end? How did she treat our family and that of my uncles? Did she treat you better because you agreed? No. She actually treats you worse than she treats my uncles. Do you think this is still a question of whether you agree or not?" When Jiang Wu heard Jiang Chun's words, he fell into deep thought. He knew that he wasn't as well liked by his parents as his siblings were. Putting aside his 2 married sisters, he was the dumbest among the 5 brothers in the family, so he had wanted to do more things for his parents to see since he was young. As time passed, he became used to this kind of sacrifice, and his family seemed to be used to asking him for things. Jiang Chun could tell that Jiang Wu looked a little sad, but she still decided to be ruthless and expose his unrealistic fantasy. "Whenever I go to my grandparents' house, they give everyone gifts but me. Grandma favors boys over girls, but she still gave my female cousins candy during the New Year. However, I never got one. No matter who did something wrong, they would blame it on me without hesitation. Is it because you didn't protect me? No, it's because they knew that Grandma would never listen to our family. There's also Mom. When everyone went to Grandma's house to help prepare New Year's Eve dinner during the new year, she went the earliest and came back the latest. My aunts chatted while working, but as long as Mom dared to stop, she would be scolded even if she just had to drink water or go to the bathroom. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.